All right, welcome to the first video in the Rough Rider Film School curriculum sort of thing that I'm setting up here. Um, this is going to be also the first video in the Filmmaking 101 series, which is just going to be just a collection of 3 or 4 videos um, that just sort of give you a basic overview of just an overview on filmmaking in general, what the parts of a film set are, all of that sort of basic stuff. Um, and uh, After that, it'll be split up by departments, which the only reason they're called departments is because that's sort of the film industry term. And it's going to be categories like pre-production, writing, camera, lighting, sound, visual effects, editing, all of that stuff. And then hopefully there will be beginner content to advanced content. So whether you know nothing about filmmaking but you want to learn, or you already know some stuff but you want to learn more, um, hopefully there will be material for any sort of level. So next, I want to talk a little bit about me. I am a rising sophomore at Case, class of 2020. I started making movies. Well, movies is a bit of a stretch, but I started getting interested in actually like visual effects and all the cool science fiction spaceship stuff you see in movies and all that. Probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And then since then, I've sort of gotten interested in filmmaking about 5 years ago. Um, and since then, I've spent probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours, kind of scouring the internet, just learning about filmmaking, and all the information's out there if you want to find it yourself. But basically, what I want to do here with this Rough Rider Film School thing is just to sort of take all the good information that I've found and both condense it and also make it available to you. For each track, there are going to be videos either by other people, articles by other people, or if I can't really find anything on that subject, I'll just make my own video, and hopefully they won't just be PowerPoint presentations, because PowerPoint presentations are boring. I just couldn't think of really a way to do this in a video. But in the future, I'll try to mix it up a bit. Other than that, if you want to go and find your own resources, Rocket Jump Film School is one. If you've ever heard of Video Game High School or Freddie W., then you know who Rocket Jump is. They're a production company that makes YouTube videos, really entertaining YouTube videos, lots of special effects, really cool stuff. My roommate is snoring in the background. Um, where was I? Oh, right. So Rocket Jump, not only now do they make videos for entertainment, they also make educational videos on learning how to do filmmaking. So they are sort of just starting. I think they just started like a couple years ago, but they already have probably like 100 videos at this point on either their website, or you can look them up on YouTube. Really, really, really good stuff. Other than that, there's also Film Riot, which might be the most well-known YouTube channel for learning filmmaking. It's run by this guy Ryan Connolly. He's been doing this since like 2009, so they've got so many videos on everything from writing to pre-production to camera, lighting, post-production, visual effects, sound. Literally anything is probably on their YouTube channel. So you should definitely check that out. There's also Filmmaker IQ, which is also a YouTube channel. They are sort of interesting in the sense that they sort of take a more, I guess, historical approach. Like if you want to learn about the history of something, then check out Filmmaker IQ. They have some really good videos on history of visual effects, history of editing. They also have some really good practical videos. Like they recently made one on blocking a scene, which I actually learned a lot watching it. And yeah, the way that they're able to have like a 10-15 minute video and condense an incredible amount of information down. It feels like when people like shoot up heroin, it like feels like you're shooting up with knowledge, and that sounds weird, but it's actually really cool. Anyway, moving on. There's also Video Copilot, which videocopilot.net, not .com, it's videocopilot.net. It's a website, and it is the number one website to learn how to do visual effects. So if you ever wanted to learn how to use After Effects, or maybe you have a copy of After Effects, you want to learn more, they have literally hundreds of tutorials at any skill level on how to do various effects. And if you want to learn how to do that sort of thing, I would just recommend starting with the first one and just going through them, because they're all great. And then finally, I recommend Experience as a learning resource. You can spend as much time as you want in your room watching videos, learning about stuff, like I did. But really, you're not going to really learn that until you put it into practice. And the only way you can put it into practice is by making videos. Make videos with your friends, make videos by yourself, make videos with Rough Rider. Why would you learn about, how to operate a camera if you're never going to operate a camera? The best way you can learn about how to make a movie is to actually make a movie, because there are things that Experience will teach you that you'll never find on the internet. So if there is a number one piece of advice that I could give anyone, whether they're starting out or whether they've been doing this for a while, is to just jump in and do it. Like even if you just have an iPhone, the iPhone is a really good camera. You can get iMovie, you can get Adobe software through the school or through Rough Rider. And just jump in and start doing stuff. So that's the number one piece of advice that I could give you. The number two piece of advice that I could give you is that filmmaking is a team sport. The most common misconception about filmmaking is that it's just, actors, a director, a cameraman, and a sound guy. And while if you have a really bare bones shoot that you need to do, it can be, stripped down to those elements. Really, if you have no interest in learning how to use a camera, no interest in doing anything other than lighting, you're really important and we need you. If you want to do a bunch of stuff, you're really important and we need you. Really, the only thing that we want for members of Rough Rider is just people who are excited about visual storytelling. And if you're excited about visual storytelling, then I think that you'll be a good fit here. So now I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the roles of the filmmaking process. There are way more than this, and we're going to go in depth into just about all of them in the next couple of videos. But right now I just want to get a general overview. So the first one is the writer. And obviously you can't make a movie without a script. A lot of times films are made where a writer will just write a screenplay and they will sell it to a production company, and the production company will go ahead and make the movie. And the writer won't be involved in the production process with anything other than just writing the screenplay. Other times, the writer will also direct the movie, but this generally only happens if the person writing the movie is a well-known director. or vice versa. So next is the producer. The producer, in the most general sense, is the person who gets the movie produced. You know, um, it's called film production because you're producing a film, and the producer is the number one person in charge of getting that production to happen. And as a result, the producer is really the person in charge. It's a common misconception that people think it's the director, and that the director just has free reign. And while that's true a lot of the time, generally the producer is the one in charge because the producer is the one with the money. The producer is the one with the location. In addition to that, basically anyone who had a instrumental hand in having the movie made can be listed as a producer. Everyone who's involved in the film is could be considered a producer in some way, but specifically what I'm talking about here is, say you're making a movie, and say you're making a movie and you want to film it uptown, you want to film at a certain place, and you need to get permission from the property owner, and the property owner gives you permission to film there. You might want to list them as a producer for the movie. In addition to that, the reason why I have Christopher Nolan here for the picture for this slide is because while Christopher Nolan is a very famous director, he is often also a producer for his movies, so that he has complete creative control and he can make the film that he wants to make. So next, of course, is the director. And the director's job is to basically be the creative the creative force behind the movie. The movie is basically the brainchild of the director. So the director is the one who creatively oversees all aspects of the film. So acting, camera and lighting, post-production, pre-production. The director basically works with all of the other elements in creating the film through every element of the production process. They're the person who directs people, so it makes sense to call them a director. A lot of times also the director is the person who wrote the script, though this is actually more often not the case than is the case in big films. But in smaller films, usually the director and writer are the same person, but this doesn't always have to be the case. Also, the director is the person who says action. That's important, unless you're George Lucas. All right, next up is the director of photography, or DP, or DOP, or cinematographer. All of those terms really describe the same person, and you can use any of them to call the director of photography. I use DP because it's the shortest and I'm lazy. So I like to use the shortest words to describe people, but you can call them the cinematographer if you want to. The DP is the person who oversees all aspects of camera and lighting. And so someone, you might watch this and you might say, well, what's the difference between the DP and the director? And like I said, remember, the director creatively oversees all aspects of the film. The DP creatively oversees all aspects of camera and lighting, which are just one aspect of the filmmaking process. So like I said, filmmaking is really a team sport. Even if you're not into camera and lighting, there are plenty of other really important roles that go towards getting a film out. The production designer is the person who really controls what you see. So while the director of photography controls what's in the frame, the production designer is the person who oversees the construction of the set, oversees props, costumes, everything that is actually in the frame that you're looking at, other than, of course, like the actors and visual effects and all of that. Though the visual effects supervisor and the production designer could be the same person. Or the visual effects supervisor and the director could be the same person. So if you're into theater, you're into set design, you're into makeup, costume design, all that, this is the role for you. Next up is the editor, and the editor is the person who takes the footage from the film and constructs the finished project. Because obviously you need someone to put all of the footage together and make an actual film from that. Another common misconception is that people only shoot what they're going to use on a film set, and that's definitely not true. Basically, in pre-production, the director, the script supervisor, the producers, and maybe the writer plan out all of the shots that they want to get for a scene, but the editor and the director in post-production decide what they want to use. And actually, it's a very small percentage what you actually see in the finished product versus what was actually shot. So next I'm going to go over the filmmaking process and give a sort of general overview towards all three aspects of making a film. First is pre-production. Pre-production is the most overlooked part of the production process. And that's kind of unfortunate because the better your pre-production is, usually the more efficient the rest of your production will be, and that will save you money, that'll save you time, and that'll probably save the entire film, because if you get to the later points in production and everything's just taking forever because you did a terrible job planning, you might have to pull the plug on the whole project, and that would suck. So like we said before, there's the writer who creates the screenplay. Generally, when a writer creates a screenplay and tries to sell it to producers, sell it to a production company, it will not have any sort of camera movements or any sort of direction for anyone else, because you don't really want to step on their toes. Basically, it just describes what happens in the movie, and it has dialogue, and that's basically it. So you have your script. The next thing you need to do is actually take what is in your head, what's in the writer's head, if the writer's going to be involved in pre-production, and you want to express it to other people, because you can have this really, really cool idea in your head about a film, but you need to convey it to other people to get them excited. Generally, how this is done is through pre-visualization, through storyboarding. Storyboarding and pre-visualization are sort of the same thing. Storyboarding is a kind of pre-visualization. Pre-visualization, or previs for short, is just anything you'll do in pre-production to visually express sort of your vision for the movie. Storyboarding is where the director will work with a storyboard artist, or they'll use software, or they'll draw the storyboards themselves, and they'll plan out the shots and sort of how they want things to work. And then the other part of pre-production is just planning in general. You want to plan your shoots, schedule your shoots, schedule turnarounds, schedule what crew you'll need, what equipment you'll need, so that you don't spend any time on stuff you don't need to spend time on, and you don't go to post and realize that you forgot to shoot an entire scene. The middle and probably the most important, though every aspect of the production is equally important, but the one that takes the most people usually, generally takes the most time, is principal photography, except if you're like making an action movie, it might be post-production, you never know. But principal photography is when the actual filming happens. A film crew is split up into different groups of people called departments, which do different things. Now, the word department can make people think that there's sort of hyper specialization that goes on, and while that is certainly true on big Hollywood film sets, where you've got, first assistant directors, second assistant directors, second assistant directors, assistants for people's assistants, because it's this gigantic production and you need that many people. On the sort of small shoots that we're going to do, people are going to be pulling double duty, doing multiple roles. And that's part of the fun, is being able to do all sorts of different jobs. So the first department is, of course, the camera department. And the camera department is the first assistant camera, the second assistant camera, and it can also be made up of other people like a DIT, but they oversee the camera itself and basically nothing else. Next is sound, and sound oversees what you hear. Generally, the sound will be made up of a boom operator, which you can see in this slide here. There'll also be a sound mixer usually. So next there's grip and electric. Now, watching this, you might be surprised that there are actually more departments than just camera and sound, and, well, there are. Grip and electric is just as important as camera and sound, because they are the people who set up the lights, and you can't have an image without light, you know? And also you can't have a good image without good light. Lots of people will, shell out thousands of dollars on super fancy cameras, super fancy lenses, expecting that it'll automatically give them a better image, when really you need to invest more into your lighting, because lighting probably has the biggest impact on how good your image looks. Next, there's production design, and I already talked about what the production designer does. So production design is the department that basically reports to the production designer and constructs a set, makes props, all of that fun stuff. And then there's also hair and makeup. Hair and makeup does everything from making the actors look good, keeping continuity. If someone has their hair combed a certain way in one shot and you come back the next day, you want to make sure that continuity is kept so it looks like everything was shot all at once. Hair and makeup also does stuff like special effects, cosmetic special effects, like here is a screenshot from The Walking Dead, and you can see the zombie makeup that the zombies are wearing. Are they walkers? I don't know. I don't watch The Walking Dead, so. And then the final aspect of production is post-production. And post-production is exactly how it sounds. You have all of your footage shot, and now you need to edit it together. And you need to mix your sound, you need to do your visual effects. Now, 15 years ago, you might have needed one of these huge editing bays to make your movie, but nowadays with software like Premiere Pro, Final Cut, After Effects, Audition, an editing bay could just be your laptop. So part of post is editing, of course. Here's a screenshot of Adobe Premiere Pro, which is the software we use for editing. It's really, really good, completely full-featured. People use it on big blockbuster movies all the time. Really, for editing, the best way to learn how to edit is to just do it. I think probably out of all of the film production roles I'm most proficient in, I think editing would probably be the number one. There are so many aspects of editing that I learned just by doing it. It's a lot more cerebral than the other jobs, I think. Or at the very least, it's a lot harder to explain what makes an edit good, versus someone who is just putting clips together in a timeline. And then, of course, there's visual effects. Visual effects is anything that a computer does to alter the image. So any sort of green screen work, any sort of CGI, any sort of compositing, that all falls under visual effects. Generally, the software that you're going to use is After Effects. And After Effects is another software that Adobe makes, and you can get it through Rough Rider. And then the last part of post-production I'm going to talk about is soundtrack or sound design. Generally, the only thing that people will even record on a film set is the dialogue between the actors. And even then, that dialogue might not be usable. So sound design people have to basically create the soundscape of the film. And sound design is, aside from pre-production, generally the most overlooked part of making videos. And that's really a shame, because the number one way that you can spot something that looks amateurish is bad sound. And having really, really fucking good sound in your film will actually make you able to maybe excuse some bad visuals. But having really good visuals will not excuse having bad sound. You have to have good sound no matter what, even if your visuals aren't that great. So over these next few videos, when we go over the basics of stuff like shot composition, lighting design, and all of that, there's going to be a lot of things that are called rules, or principles that you generally want to follow. But no, somebody isn't gonna come to your house and arrest you if you break the rules. And sometimes breaking the rules can be a really important thing. Now, that being said, don't break the rules because you feel like it. Break the rules because you already know the rules, and you want to do something different. There's a phrase, I think this is a phrase in filmmaking, but it could be just, creative work in general, which is know the rules to break the rules. And so it's really, really important to learn the rules, but then once you already have the rules mastered, it's a good idea to make your own thing. So here's maybe not a great example of breaking the rules. So the most important principle in shot composition is called the rule of thirds. You'll see this black grid on the screen. And generally when you have something important in the frame, you want it to not actually be in the center of the frame, but you want it to be at one of these intersections. And the reason for that is because it's actually more aesthetically pleasing, and less, I guess, visually jarring to have things sort of off-centered than it is to have things at the very centered. And if you'll notice this guy here, I just found this picture on Google. He's just sort of hanging out in the center of the frame here, and that makes the picture look like an amateur did it, because there's nothing really visually interesting in the picture. Now, on the other hand, if you've seen Netflix's A Series of Unfortunate Events, then you might notice that the shot composition is actually really unorthodox. And if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to watch it. And they break the rule of thirds like in almost every shot in the entire season. Here's a shot of Lemony Snicket, played by Patrick Warburton, and he's standing in the center of the frame here. Now, technically this is breaking the rule of thirds, but if you'll notice, look at the set design around him in the background. You've got poles which are converging and they're symmetric on each side of the frame. You've got the tree line, which is symmetric on each side of the frame, and it's all sort of pointing towards him. And then behind him you have the building with the eye on it, which also draws attention to him. And this makes a really powerful framing for the character. And in this case, it was a good idea to frame the shot like this. So the reason that they did this was because they knew what they were doing, and they knew that they wanted to break the rule of thirds, and they wanted to compose shots in the center of the frame. So that is a hopefully you have not fallen asleep yet. In the future, I'll try and make these videos a little more entertaining, but I wanted to get this video out as quickly as possible. So yeah, like I said at the very beginning, the best way to learn how to make movies is to make movies. So even if you've just got an iPhone, go out with your friends, make some films. So yeah, thank you for watching.